I got this comment a couple of days ago, and sir, boy are you in luck, because what I'm about to show you indeed has a tube, a very rare one and a very coveted one. Today we look at the DC-30 EF86 preamp from DPE pedals. What is up, YouTube? My name is Buddy Blues, and it's Small Business Tuesday on a day. This is my first time working with DPE pedals, the first time I hear of the brand, and I already like the guy behind the brand. Let me tell you what this is. This is a preamp pedal, meaning, can it do overdrive? Yeah. Can it do distortion? Yeah. Is that its Primary job? Not really. It's much cooler in my opinion. In the early 90s, there were preamps that were made with EF86 tubes built into them. Now they're extremely expensive and very hard to find. Even in the early 90s, they were very rare. It's a very niche studio thing. Our buddy Derek from DPE Pedals decided to make it not so niche and make it readily available to the public. Before we get into what we've got, knobs and switches and stuff, I want to explain how this works, how it's supposed to work. It runs on 12 volts. So when you order yours, go on Amazon and order yourself a good quality 12 watt isolated power supply. Number one. Number two, it is always on. This foot switch, don't let it deceive you. What it does is it adds a boost. It brings in a boost that we're going to talk about in a couple of seconds. It is always on. If you want to use it in a way to where you don't want it on all the time, I do recommend using what I'm going to be doing. This guy, any loop switcher. This was cheap. It's made by American Loopers. It's cheap. It's very cheap. Or any passive looper works. You've got plenty, I'm sure. What it does is it's gonna be able to take it out of the circuit. Now, I said a second ago that's how I use it. It's how I'm using it for this demo, so that you can hear the sound of the amp first without this being, again, this is always on. You plug this in, it's on. But why would I want something that's always on, Buddy Blues? Does your amp have an EF86 tube in it? In the V1 section of your amp? It does not. Listen, it's a common mod. A lot of people change their tubes for like their 12AXM, whatever. Their V1, the preamp tube, the one that's really gonna flavor the whole preamp, the very first one. A lot of people change it for an EF86. If you don't want to do that to your amp, if you don't want to mess with your amp, if you have a vintage amp, whatever, if you have an amp with an effects loop, done. Buddy Blues, this is just 12 volts. There's no way it's gonna power up a tube. Yes, it is, because inside it's running, there's something called voltage doublers, ladies and gentlemen, in physics and life. Inside it's running at 250 volts, 250 volts, meaning no touchy on the inside. Over here, there's a little opening for heat escapement. Now let's talk about the knobs. It has a master volume, which is the input, if you will, of the tube, how much is hitting it. But we're not talking about this yet. This is just the always on feature. It has a high cut on it, and it has a depth that does that. Counterclockwise is more bass, clockwise is more, think of a kind of a frequency shift, if you will, or like a bass frequency shift. On the boost side, you have volume and gain, and that just hits that tube even harder. This is what you press if you want to get into the overdrive and you know, territory, the distortion territory, breakup and distortion territory, if you will. So once again, remember, I'm going to be using a loop switcher, meaning I'm going to play clean first, then I'm going to hit the switcher itself. That brings it into the circuit, and we've got the circuit itself. Then when I click this, you'll see a light here. Then when I click this, we're in the gain section of this pedal. This pedal is always on. If you have, for example, if you have a Boss, fuck me, what is that amp called? The most popular amp on earth. Katana. If you have a Boss Katana, this introduces real tube breakup to a Boss Katana. If you have, forget the Boss Katana. If you have a pedal, if you have a Helix, if you have a pedal like the Universal Audio Dream or Lion or whatever, if you have one of those amp in a box type pedals with a cab built into it, blah, 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 they sound incredible, and the technology is really there of how they simulate it and the feel and all of that. It doesn't have a tube. This does. If you're a tube person like me, ladies and gentlemen, this one is it. Okay, enough blah blah, let's get to it. A Victory MK Clean aux box, let's get to it. Oh, hot. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you have now heard the DC-30 from DPE pedals. Did you hear the second I engaged the pedal or I brought it into the loop, how it brought this warmth, this real tube warmth to it? And when I dug into the guitar, even though my amp was running clean this entire time, when I dug into the guitar, did you hear how it broke up like a cranked amp would? So, Mr. Buddy Blues, I have a question. Pardon my interruption of your here YouTube video. What if I set my amp, my tube amp, my Boss Katana amp, or my Universal Audio amp simulator? What if I set that to bedroom level? Would I still be able to get tube breakup? Listen here, Roger. Listen, here's the deal. Yes, because think of your amp now acting as a master volume for this already broken up thing. Think of your amp as now the post amp. Forget the amp's preamp. Think of your amp as like the post amp, the effects, the power tubes, if you will, where it's just the master volume. Crank the heck out of this. Put your amp at whatever volume you'd like, and you're in business. If this is your first Small Business Tuesday, welcome. If it's not, welcome back. What we do with Small Business Tuesdays, we look at brands that I have never heard of these guys. We look at brands that you've never heard of and we try to give them a voice because those are the guys that are innovating. They're doing cool stuff. They're finding EF86 tubes. If you go on his website to order this, by the way, you get to choose what kind. Would you like a new old stock tube? Would you like a blah, blah, blah tube? A Mullard tube? You get to choose which tube you like. It changes the price a little bit. Again, if you're going to buy one from the actual 50s, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than this standard one. But you know what I'm saying. It's just, pardon my language, it's cool shit. These are the small businesses are the ones that are doing the coolest stuff out there. They're the ones that are doing this. You've never heard of this, I guarantee you. And now I'm so glad that you have, and I'm glad that you're here and that you've watched it. And I do hope you buy yourself one of these because I was running it through a $6,000 amp. Imagine running it through anything else you'd like, through your computer. You plug this into that, and then, you know, all the new fancy schmancy stuff, you put a software that has a built-in amp into it, plug-in, I guess, I don't know, man. Okay, I'm just a studio guy. You plug in the computer into the plug-in, and then magic happens, and you have a simulated amp on your computer. Well, now you have real tube breakup right here, before it even hits the interface. Come on, guys. Am I like, how much money? I'm not here trying to sell you. Like, if you buy 18 of these, I make $0. Okay? Listen, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to show you some cool stuff here. If you want to pay attention, pay attention. If you don't want to pay attention, I'm sure Mr. Beast has uploaded some new cringe video you could watch. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I have been Buddy Blues. You have been the people of the blues. Like, share, subscribe if you like this video. If you didn't like this video, until next time, thank you for watching.